For as long as I can remember, run and gun games have held a special place in my heart. Back when I first got into gaming, aside from fighting, racing, and platformers, this was the genre that instantly clicked with me. I've always loved how straightforward these games typically are. No convoluted systems, no overloaded mechanics, just pure reflexes, clean movement, and the occasional power-up to spice things up. They are the kind of games I can jump into any time of year, whether I'm playing solo or pulling friends and family into a co-op session, and I know I'll have a good time from start to finish. So, for this video, in no particular order, I want to talk about some run and guns I've played and completed over the past few years, excluding the obvious ones like Contra, Metal Slug, Super Cyborg, and Cuphead. These are the titles that really stood out to me for reasons that I'll elaborate. Alright, without further ado, let's dive into the games that I think do an excellent job of delivering the action, capturing the spirit of the old school greats, and adding enough of their own identity to feel fresh and exciting. Okay, let's start with the one that plays closest to Contra out of everything else on the list. If there's any modern run and gun that proudly wears its Contra DNA on its sleeve, it has to be Blazing Chrome. From the moment you start, you can tell the influence of Contra Hardcore and Shattered Soldier in the game, particularly in how you can select any level from the start and how it handles its weapons. You get 4 weapon slots and can freely switch between whatever you've collected. Speaking of weapons, there's no spread shot and no homing shot in this game, so none of the usual go-to weapons you'd normally want to keep on you for dear life. Instead of those two old reliables, you've got the classic machine gun, the chunky grenade launcher with low fire rate, the energy whip that shreds up close, and the particle cannon that can melt just about anything inside once it's charged. Every weapon has its purpose in specific situations, so you're encouraged to swap and adapt your strategy on the fly. And you only lose the weapon you're currently selecting if you die, except the default machine gun. On top of that, there are bot companions that can help pulling you through tough spots. You've got the attack bot that boosts your firepower, the defense bot that adds 2 extra hit points for your character, and the speed bot that grants faster movement and even lets you double jump. They only last for 1 life, but they can absolutely turn the tide if you use them well. They add just the right amount of extra flavor without breaking the balance. Mechanically, the game mixes influence from other titles as well. You can melee enemies by getting close and tapping fire, a very Metal Slug-like touch. You can hop into mech suits and mow down enemies, and with the dodge roll as your main evasive tool, mobility becomes just as important as firepower. And trust me, you're gonna need that mobility, because the game's difficulty is no joke either. Even on normal, the game doesn't pull its punches, just like old school Contra, and staying alive requires fast reactions and solid awareness. It's tough, yes, but in a fair way. Enemies telegraph their attacks, hazards are readable, and the game gives you enough tools to survive if you're paying attention. The challenge also shines through in the boss fights. Blazing Chrome features a great variety of bosses and mini-bosses, each with its own rhythm and gimmick. Some force you to keep moving, either horizontally or vertically, as you dodge sweeping beams and line-clearing attacks. Others demand that you study patterns, weave between projectiles, and strike when the opening hits. The mini-bosses especially deserve credit. They're tough, but not cheap, and they put just enough pressure on you to keep your heart rate up without slipping into frustration. Presentation-wise, the game looks pretty fantastic. It's styled after 16-bit shooters, but with a modern sense of detail and color that really pops. The post-apocalyptic environments look great. Ruined cities, deserts, robot factories, all with sharp pixel art that stays readable even during the busiest fights. Characters and enemies are designed with clarity in mind, so you never feel like you're getting blindsided by something hidden in the visual noise. The soundtrack, however, is fine. It fits the atmosphere, but it's not the kind of soundtrack I see myself coming back to when I'm not playing the game. It gets the job done, but it's not a major selling point, at least in my opinion. What is a major selling point though, I think, is the replay value. Once you beat arcade mode, you unlock 2 additional melee-focused characters, and they drastically change how the game plays. Instead of guns and their varieties, you get close-range attacks, charged slashes, and mid-air dashes. Almost feel like switching from X to Zero in the Mega Man X series. Going through the same stages again with these characters for a fresh playthrough feels exciting in a whole new way. Almost like discovering a remix version of the game you just beat. And if all that weren't enough variety, Blazing Chrome even throws in Space Harrier-style jetpack sections in some of its levels. You're flying forward, dodging hazards, and blasting everything on screen in pseudo 3D tunnel. Also, the hoverbike sequences, basically an another loving nod to hardcore, are just as frantic and a blast to play. You're fighting enemies and mini-bosses at high speed while managing jumps, shots, and hazards all at once. All of this is why so many reviews describe Blazing Chrome as a perfect blend of Contra and Metal Slug. Well, mostly Contra. And yeah, I agree 100%. It captures what made both of those series timeless. Tight controls, intense bosses, cool weapons, while blending them into something that feels both familiar and fresh. All in all, it's a standout run and gun in its own right, and I highly recommend you check it out. Now, let's move on from the post-apocalyptic to the cyberpunk-inspired. This is Huntdown, a game that oozes 80s charm from every pixel. The 16-bit visuals go all in on retro-future aesthetics, from grimy alleyways and industrial slums that look like they belong in RoboCop, neon-wash cityscapes straight out of Blade Runner, and a narrator who sounds like he's gearing up to announce an old-school action trailer.
They only pledge allegiance to the highest bidder. Their title, Bounty Hunter.
The presentation alone could sell this game. Thankfully, the gameplay matches the vibe. This time, you get 3 playable bounty hunters to choose from, each with their own default loadouts. Anaconda, great name by the way, starts with a burst fire Glock and tomahawks. John Sawyer packs a heavy revolver and boomerangs, and the android Mo-Man brings a full auto pistol and kunais. All of their default weapons have infinite ammo, although the throwables come with a brief cooldown before you can use them again, to keep you from spamming. Everyone's got the same dash move to avoid damage and dash dive to quickly drop down, which is a lifesaver for more than one occasion during my playthrough. The game's story campaign is split into 20 stages, divided into 4 criminal gangs that you're tasked to dismantle. Each gang has its own theme and enemy types, which helps the game avoid that samey feeling that often hits arcade shooters. Every stage ends with a boss, and these bosses are the real highlight. Each fight has a distinct gimmick, from high-speed chases to enclosed arenas to vertical firefights where positioning becomes everything. None of these battles feel recycled, and every boss knows how to put up a fight without crossing into cheap territory. One of the biggest strengths Huntdown has is variety, and I mean variety in almost everything. Aside from the bosses and the levels I previously mentioned, the game constantly showers you with secondary weapons that you can pick. Shotguns, rifles, machine guns, flamethrowers, bazookas, mines, grenades, remote bombs, you name it. Even melee options like crowbars and baseball bats are available if you prefer a much more direct approach. Every new level shifts the rhythm a little, thanks to the weapons lying around and the way enemies are placed. It really keeps the gameplay loop from being repetitive. Another huge part of Huntdown's identity is environmental interaction. You can take cover behind destructible crates and ledges by ducking or hide in shadowy alcoves to avoid incoming damage. You can also kick the enemies out of the way to give you some space. This adds a subtle tactical edge to the otherwise fast-paced action. That said, there's one notable limitation. Unlike other titles on the list, you can't aim up or down, only horizontally. But surprisingly, the level layouts are so well crafted around this restriction that you rarely notice it, and the game feels more faithful to the old-school arcade design because of it. Enemy variety is another area where Huntdown shines. Each gang introduces new goons with different weapons and behaviors, from riot shield users, Molotov throwers, rooftop snipers, bikers, melee berserkers, drones, to turrets. The action steadily escalates, and even the standard enemies are designed to keep you on your toes based on either what their numbers are and what they're packing, forcing you to juggle movement, cover, and quick weapon swaps. Speaking of steady action, I also find the pacing to be excellent as well. Most stages last around 5 minutes with decent amount of checkpoints, where you can also replenish your health to varying degree depending on the difficulty you pick. Long enough to feel substantial, but short enough that you always want to play just one more time. Bosses can extend that timer depending on how difficult they are and how many phases they have though, but overall, the game keeps everything flowing at a smooth, satisfying pace. Me finding it hard to put the controller down is a testament to the game's well-balanced pace. Furthermore, if you play co-op, the other player can be revived once they're down to their last health, Cuphead style. On the audio-visual side, the game nails that retro-future cyberpunk-inspired tone. The soundtrack leans heavily into synthwave without overpowering the gameplay, giving each stage a gritty, pulsing atmosphere. Sound effects, especially gunshots and explosions, have a chunky weight to them that makes every hit feel impactful.
Vengeance is mine. Give him hell!
There's even a bit of exploration you can do throughout any level. Hidden alcoves and optional paths hide secret stashes that reward you with either extra weapons, bonus points, or references to movies like Escape from New York, the aforementioned Blade Runner, and even animes like Akira. It's a small thing, sure, but it adds so much charm and personality. Overall, Huntdown is a stylish, tight, and incredibly polished run and gun that knows exactly what it wants to be. It's retro without feeling outdated, modern without losing its arcade soul, and varied enough to stay engaging from the opening gang hideouts to the final showdown. If you want a run and gun that's dripping with style and packed with action, this one's definitely a must-play.
Area complete.
Next, let's talk about Iron Meat, a game that asks a very simple question: what if Contra, but absolutely drenched in blood and gore? This is easily the bloodiest run and gun on the list, and I mean that in the most complimentary way possible. You play as a regular soldier fighting an iron-devouring alien organism called the Meat, and this thing infects everything it touches. Visually, it's kind of like the creature from the movie The Thing or the game Carrion. Soldiers, tanks, helicopters, turrets. If it exists, the Meat will mutate it to something you'll probably need to blow up in the next 5 seconds. Personally, I think of this game as a 2D side-scrolling Doom. The way you shoot your way from level to level, fighting against extra-dimensional abominations, and the level of gore it shows from start to finish. And the comparison to Doom doesn't stop there. The game's soundtrack is composed by Darkman007, the very same who's responsible for the soundtrack of Super Cyborg. The whole music leans heavily into metal-inspired, hard-driving bangers that fit the game's violent, horror-tinged atmosphere. Iron Meat is structured across 8 stages, each ending with a boss fight. You start on military base on Earth, and the research facility on the moon itself will serve as the final stage. The pacing is pretty okay, and the difficulty curve is manageable enough on normal. One stage might be a classic horizontal push from point A to point B, the next one suddenly shifts to vertical climbing, then another throws in moving platforms, rising hazards, or environmental traps to keep you guessing. The campaign makes sure you never get too comfortable, rotating enough layouts and gimmicks often enough that each level feels distinct without dragging things out. The control scheme in Iron Meat will feel instantly recognizable to any old-school Contra fan. Movement, jumping, shooting, everything handles it at the same level of tightness and fluidity. When you jump, you can still move freely in mid-air. The weapon selection will also feel familiar. You get your standard machine gun, a curved plasma blaster, a classic spreader, a laser gun, and few others sprinkled throughout the campaign. Most weapons can be powered up, boosting damage or expanding your shoot coverage. You can carry 2 different weapons at a time and freely switch between them as needed. One thing that helps Iron Meat stand out is the character customization. After beating the stages, you earn XP, and once you reach certain thresholds, you unlock more than 30 alternate character parts. Different heads, torsos, arms, legs. You can mix and match them however you want. Some of the customizations are full of references to other games and medias, like Metal Slug and Futurama. It's purely cosmetic, however, so no gameplay buffs, no stat changes, nothing that breaks balance. But I still find it fun nonetheless. It gives you a sense of progression between stages. It's basically a way to personalize your player character, and that's about it. The boss fights deserve a shout out too. Nearly all of them lean heavily into the body horror theme. Massive fleshy machines, grotesque hybrids of metal and meat, or infected war vehicles barely holding themselves together. Each boss plays differently enough that you have to actually learn their patterns instead of just brute forcing your way through. The general enemy variety is solid across the campaign as well, and I don't don't just mean their designs. Mutated soldiers either rush you down or shoot you, long tentacles can stop you on your tracks, and infected turrets and vehicles roll in with meat tendrils flailing out of their bodies. The game keeps mixing creatures and machines in ways that stay visually interesting and mechanically threatening, which helps Iron Meat maintain its momentum from the very first stage. If you're looking for something that stays faithful to classic Contra while diving straight into a vat of gore, Iron Meat absolutely delivers. It's unapologetically brutal and packed with enough variety to keep the action exciting all the way through. Definitely give this one a try. Across all three of these games, what really stands out to me is how each one captures a different side of the run-and-gun genre. Blazing Chrome brings the tight design and intensity, Huntdown adds style, charm, and variety, Iron Meat goes all in on gore and spectacle. None of them particularly reinvent the wheel, but each one knows exactly what it wants to be and delivers it with confidence. I guarantee every one of these is worth your time. Anyway, that wraps up my little rundown of modern run-and-gun titles that I think deserve more love. If you've played any of these, let me know your thoughts. Or if you have any recommendations I should check out, drop them in the comments. I'm always up for discovering more hidden gems. I'm not going to bombard you with any more YouTuber cliches, so if you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Thanks for watching, happy belated New Year, and I'll see you in the next one.